What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I am also a certified empowerment coach, also president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications, and I'm also a trainer now. And always, I like to say, you're blessed and highly favored, you're a magnet for miracles, and you're a solution for someone's problem. And we have another new friend on the conversation tonight, Dr. Larry J. Walker. And I've been trying to get this gentleman on this show since August. He's that busy. So I'm glad we finally got him on. And he's going to share with us tonight a great article that he wrote back in August, The 360-Degree Village Approach to Mentoring Black Males. So we'd like to welcome to our conversation, Dr. Walker. How are you, sir?
Dr. Vibe, it's a pleasure to be back with you. I'm sorry we were able to connect, but we have the opportunity to engage in really an important dialogue.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you. Can you share a little background about yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So I have a variety of experiences. I've experienced as a policy background. I worked on Capitol Hill for 5 years. I'm a former congressional fellow with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Then I worked as legislative director, former Congressman Major Owens. I have a research background in kind of pre-K through 20 issues. I was co-editor of a book that came out in June on graduate education at historically Black college universities. I have a book on the Obama presidency. I'm co-editor with two other colleagues that comes out next summer. A number of other projects. Practitioner. I have experience teaching high school, college, and very interested in mentorship. And concerned particularly about, the obstacles that Black males encounter.
Excellent. Now, it seems that education has been part of your life for a long period of time. So I just wanted to know, where did that foundation of education come from?
Interesting enough, Dr. Bob, that's a very good question. I think it came from watching my grandparents. And neither one of them were educators, but they always seemed concerned about other people. And I think that's something that's one of the many things that I gained from them, is just caring for other individuals who come from similar circumstances or are less fortunate than you. And I think that maybe that initial spark came from them. And then kind of like any seed that's planted, it sprouted, and I've always been very interested in, working with young people, and it served me quite well throughout my life.
At a young age, did you make a decision to go the education route, or did it come to you later on in your life to go the route of education?
I think it was later in life, particularly when you look at some of the disparities in this country, in the United States in general. We see this disparities everywhere, but particularly here in the U.S. In terms of the white-Black disparities, and particularly education. I do a lot of research. A lot of my research is on mental health, race, and trauma also. We also talk about economic disparities. And all these issues are historical in nature, right? And they're systemic. So it's not just in terms of we do it, some of these, they're not just contemporary issues, but they're rooted in historical issues. And the more I read about that, the more I realized that I could really have an impact on the lives of young people through education and advocacy.
Nice. Nice to hear. When you decided to go through this route, was going through the educational process to get where you are today, was it difficult for you, or was it something that you were so passionate about you overcame all obstacles?
I'm very fortunate. I did my undergraduate work at Cheyney University, which is about 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia. And it's a historically Black college, the oldest historically Black college university, founded in 1837. And I was very fortunate. I was an elementary education major, which is really unusual for males, particularly Black males. But I was very fortunate to have mentors while I was at Cheyney, and not just, for instance, my Mr. Don Sotilla was my dorm director at the time, but also students who were upperclassmen who were very supportive. And that environment at Cheney really, and going in, I was an education major, but being there and being in Historically Black College University convinced me I was taking the right path.
So after getting out of the historically black college education system, what was your first job? What was your first role in education?
My first job in education was, let me think for a second. Oh, because then right after undergraduate, I went to graduate school at Howard. So my first job at a graduate school, I got my master's degree in education, was actually working, teaching the public school system in suburban Washington, D.C. And that was a great experience. But at the time, I've always been interested in politics. I was involved in student government. When I was an undergraduate, I was a student member of the Council of Trustees, and I also completed a fellowship in my home state of Pennsylvania. So I started to develop a kind of a political bug towards my end of my tenure as undergraduate. Then I was in graduate school in Howard University, which is in Washington, D.C. So I thought to myself, it'd be very interesting if I can get involved in some policy. So I taught for a year, and then during that year, you look at how policy, education, among other issues intersect. And I applied for a fellowship to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and was very fortunate to be selected and work for one of the ranking members on the Education and Workforce Committee, Congressman Major Owens.
Was it difficult going from the educational arena to the political arena?
It was extremely difficult. It's difficult because it's a different space, right? So, there's politics in everything you do, whatever your occupation is. But politics, even though I had, like I said, in undergrad, I was involved in politics, and even had a chance to spend a semester at the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives for a semester, and that taught me a lot. But working in DC for a member of Congress is just very different. And what's really great about the experience, what's the drawback also, you had to learn very quickly. So when I was a congressional fellow, because I already had a graduate degree and, were looking forward to, pursue a doctorate, the expectations were extremely high. And I was very fortunate. My mentor, Jacqueline Ellis, who actually passed away recently, she was the chief of staff at that time, and she mentored me and showed me the ropes. And after my fellowship was over, they asked me to stay on as full-time staff, and I became the legislative director, which essentially I oversee the legislative staff, which is a lot of responsibility, especially for a ranking member on the Education, Workforce, and Government Reform committees at that time. And you had to learn quickly. It's like kind of that thing about you have to walk before you crawl. It's like it really is no time to crawl. You have to walk right away. It's almost like a deer being born in wild. He's got to get up and walk right away. So it was a great experience. There was a lot of pressure, but I think I responded to it well, because of the mentorship of Ms. Ellis, and I felt very fortunate. It was a great experience. In 5 years working on the Hill, worked on a number of very important education, labor, health issues while I was there.
So after that period of time, where did you go next?
Well, worked on the Hill, and then my wife and I moved to Florida for a short period of time. And at the time, I was really burnt out, and I really need to do something else. And for me, it was education. So actually, I taught in the school system. Then my wife and I, at the time, my son was small. We lived in Florida for a short period of time to be close to our in-laws, and we really missed DC. Moved back to Washington, DC, and I worked in the school system for a few more years, and until I decided to move to Baltimore.
Okay, we've lost Dr. Walker for a moment, and hopefully you can come back onto the conversation.
Each other for a second there.
Okay,
Okay.
we've got you back.
But
Yeah, you left off about coming back, going to Baltimore.
right. So went back to school, got my doctorate at the same time. Continued my interest in issues that impact student outcomes and throughout the education pipeline, and worked as a research fellow at Morgan State University while I completed my doctoral work. And right now I'm working at a nonprofit organization. I'm working for a foundation right now because of, like I said, my continued interest in education, but also as a researcher, I'm still working on a number of issues. Like I said, I mentioned a book that came out, co-edited book that comes out in June, and I have a few book chapters that'll be out next year, and actually have an article that I wrote that'll be out next month.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing some of your journey with our audience. It's appreciated and not taken for granted. Let's get right to this article.
Sure.
The 360-degree village. Let's get to the article, 360-degree village approach to mentoring Black males. Why did you write this article during this period of time?
As I said, my background, I have a unique background. So I'm a practitioner, researcher, and I do advocacy work. So, and also being a father of a son. So, and living in Baltimore. So all these issues impact, how I feel, what I'm thinking about from day to day. And it made me think about all the Black and Latino males I've mentored throughout my life. And also when you look at some of the things that are occurring here in the United States, all the rhetoric, political rhetoric, and all, issues relating to the Black Lives Matter movement, and issues in terms of equality in the United States. I'm a big I love history, and often think about where we are today here in the United States and compare that to where we were 50 or 100 years ago. And I felt it was really important to write this article to share with Ebony's readers in terms of my roles as a mentor throughout my life and what it's meant to me. And not only in terms of the difference I made in the lives of these young men I've had a chance to mentor, but the difference they made in my life. And in the article in particular, I think I highlight that I benefited from the relationship with these young men just as much as they benefited from whatever guidance I provided them with. And it's really a rewarding experience. And it's particularly important considering, like I said, the barriers that Black males have to navigate, not just here in the United States, but really talking about an issue that impacts Black men throughout the diaspora. But like I said, I felt compelled to write this article, and feel very fortunate that I've had a chance to read quite a few articles for Ebony.com, and this is an article that they printed. So I feel very fortunate.
How long did it take you to write the article?
Well, articles, some of these articles that are usually around 800-900 words, they really don't take me that long. And I'm not just saying to brag, but I do a lot of writing. So articles like this, usually particularly if I have a concept, I'll email the digital editor. He and I may go back and forth a little bit, and I'll usually get an article on that day. It doesn't really take me, especially if something like this one I'm really passionate about. I can write the article it happens pretty fast. Like a topic like this is very important to me. And then really I feel very fortunate because a lot of the issues I've written for them are issues that are very close to my heart, and particularly things that have happened to me personally that I can write about. And this is one of them, certainly mentoring. So the article didn't take long. I might have written it the same day, maybe take an hour and a half, 2 hours, because as I said, I do a lot of writing. So articles of this size, around 800 words, usually don't take me that long to write. Now that means I might write it initially, but then go back and edit it a number of times personally, and maybe send it to a colleague.
Okay. So let's, I guess, start from the ground and go up. What is the state of Black male mentorship at this time, in your opinion?
Well, you know what? I guess for me, it's really important to kind of look at it as, I want to look at the positives. I mean, we already hear, you're well aware of this, you hear all things that go wrong with just issues relating to Black males. And even in my article, I highlight organizations, Black letter organizations, about Black fraternities in the United States, 100 Black Men of America. I think the state of mentorship for Black, males, I think it's a good, but I think things can get better. I think it's important that any Black male in a society who thinks they can all have some guidance to offer other young Black males, develop secure relationships and provide them with guidance, should mentor at least one Black male. I think that, and I think that's a charge that all Black men should embrace. So I think it's in a good place. And also, when I think it's mentorship, I think it's important, Dr. Vibe. It doesn't have to be something formal, like you do, like through an organization. Sometimes it could be through your church, and sometimes it could just simply mentoring young men in your community. That's mentorship, and it's just as important to simply mentor young men you come in contact with. So I think it's in a good place, but there's a room for improvement.
I'd be remiss if I don't ask you this, because of the lack in a number of Black homes of a male figure. There's not that mentorship there. Is that having a negative effect, or what effect does that have on the Black community in general because of the lack of Black male figures in a number of Black homes?
Thank you for that question. I think that's it's complicated, right? So I don't think there's any doubt statistically, and I was just actually at a conference last week, and one of the conferees brought this up relating to, we talk about single parent households here in the United States.
Okay, seem to have lost Dr. Walker again, but we're speaking that he's going to come back. Here we go.
Again.
Okay, should be coming back in just a moment.
Yeah,
there we
lost
go.
Each other again, but I can start from where I can continue. So a young Black male growing up in a household with just a single parent, mother or father raising them, statistically faces a lot of obstacles, and they're not short term, but they're long term. In terms of, now you just mentioned mentorship, but it comes down to basic economics. So they're more likely to grow up in poverty, etc. So I think it's a really important issue, but I think questions like that, we need to frame. I think it's important to frame them. So I think that there are environmental factors that contribute to the number of single parent households in the United States, particularly with the African American community, and obviously that's not unique to the Black community. But yeah, sure, it's a concern. My son is very fortunate to live in a 2-parent household with 2 parents who love and care for him, and that's important. And it's, like I said, it is certainly an issue, and I mentioned the poverty statistics. But like I said, I think it's important to remember, like I said, there are a lot of other factors that contribute to, we look at mass incarceration, for instance, in the United States. And Michelle Alexander talked about that in her book, New Jim Crow. I mean, the United States has, we have the highest incarceration rate in the United States, and I think the state of Louisiana has the highest per capita incarceration rate in the world. And that has had a major impact on Black families. The disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine in terms of the number of years, 3 strikes you're out, and the prison industrial complex has had a profound impact on the Black family. And I think that's important. It's an issue we need to address. And I mean, in terms of the number of Black children who are raised in single parent households, because you're more likely to be poor. But it's also important, like I said, to frame it and talk about what are some of the policies that have contributed to those issues.
When you get a chance to speak to members of the Black community about this issue of Black mentorship, what are you hearing back from them?
You know, it's interesting because I it's this conversation I have a lot with colleagues, other Black males in particular, about the importance of mentorship. And interesting enough, you know, and I think this is consistent with most people surround yourself with are like-minded. So a lot of my friends I talk to about issues relating to mentorship share my, you know, some of my feelings in terms of we've made some progress, but there's a lot more to do. And some of them are, you know, actively involved in mentorship to some degree, whether they have one or two or three individuals they mentor. They're going to speak to schools, and we also, I think it's important we talk about mentorship. We're not talking about mentorship, mentoring just young people, you know, kids, you know, college students, graduate students. You know, I have a friend I spoke to just last night. He mentors doctoral students. These are adults, but it's still mentorship, right? He's providing support because, you know, frankly, you know, Black men face a number of obstacles: economic, social, political, educational. So it's important to support each other throughout the lifespan. So whether you're 14 or 44, we have to support each other. So mentorship can be literally supporting somebody or providing feedback to someone within the same age group.
Now, many times when this subject is discussed, it's about young men. But I think, isn't there also a need for Black mentorship for older Black men also?
You mean in terms of mentoring older Black men instead of just kids? Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean both groups, because a lot of times you hear mentorship for younger Black males, but there's also a need for older Black males.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I was trying to, you know, one of the things I was trying to make. You have to, it's important. We like Black men, it's like support systems, safe spaces. We really don't have that many places to go, and we don't always necessarily, depending on your peer group, you may not always have people to go to discuss. So like, it's really important. Yes, we really need to. Now, like I said, the mentorship can't be strictly, you know, some high school kid who's not going to college. It has to be mentoring someone who's your age or even older than you. Maybe perhaps you have an experience, a particular skill set that individual doesn't have. So I think that's a great point, Dr. Bob. Like, so when we talk about mentorship, we shouldn't strictly just focus, okay, well, kids in elementary school need to be mentored, you know, Black males in elementary school need to be mentored by other Black males. Well, look, they're, you know, maybe they're friends that I have that are, you know, may know more about a subject than I do, who are younger than me, who in many respects mentoring me. So, and I think those are great relationships, and I think those are healthy, because I think it's important not to get too focused on age and really focus on relationships and knowledge. And once we get beyond some of these ways of viewing the world, you know, this skewed lens, particularly related to age, they kind of box you in. And, you know, particularly when it comes to looking at the whole person. But we're learning throughout the lifespan. So it's important, like I said, for this mentor, whoever you come in contact with.
You have mentored a number of young Black males. What are the common challenges you see with young Black men these days? And have they changed? Or are they still basic? Part one. The second part is, are the challenges that young Black men facing today any different than when you were a young Black male?
So are the challenges today the same as in the past?
Yes.
So I guess I'm trying to give you I think trying to give you a nuanced answer on that. So yeah, I think we black males we're faced still some of the. It's interesting because the Black Lives Matter movement, just as an example, is what I describe as a neo civil rights movement, right? So if you go back to the 1960s and you look at TV from that period and you look at TV to today, you would think, besides the color, I mean, in terms of black and white compared to color television, that you were looking at the same, it's the same time frame. So yeah, so we face, and that's what I describe, so they're academic. We talk about the school to prison pipeline here in the United States. The disproportionate number of black males have been placed in special education classrooms or misdiagnosed as being learning disabled, etc. Or even we went on college campuses and we face microaggressions. That's one example. Economic, which is such a major hurdle for black men. Even if you have the proper credentials, do you deal with issues relating to job discrimination, right? And so when you talk about housing, cities like Baltimore have a long history of racial discrimination. So, barriers in terms of here in the United States, years ago, redlining was essentially created via the federal government. And then here in Baltimore, specifically in the early 1900s, you deal with issues like housing covenants, or they, communities purposely locked out blacks and Jews, and they weren't allowed to live in certain communities. We talk about health disparities. We look at we give an example as a Tuskegee experiment from 1932 to 1972 in Tuskegee, Alabama, where black men who had STDs weren't treated, right? So for a 40-year period, 1972, that's within my lifetime, so it's really important. So this is just some examples of, and we still continue to face some of those issues. When I just mentioned health, the lack of trained medical and mental health practitioners of color within communities that need access. So though, yeah, we face this. The issues are strikingly similar to 40, 50, 70 years ago. Some of the same conversations we're having here in this country, and we really need to really have honest conversation with ourselves as a nation. And with all the rhetoric you're hearing right now, that definitely is not happening.
Before we go any further, I'd like to give a big shout out to a gentleman who I've not seen for a long time, and he's doing well. John Haynes III, thank you so much for watching the conversation. If you want to join in, just type it in the chat room. I'd love you to come in and you always add positive value wherever you go. Or if you have a question for Dr. Walker, please type it in. Coming back to you, Dr. Walker, after you said about things haven't changed in so many years for the challenges for black men, what does that tell you about the state of America when it comes to black men in particular?
I think it tells me that with a nation, we are on repeat. So instead of figuring out a way to address some of the inequities and talking about it, I mean, when I mean talking about it, I mean reflecting on, recognizing the nation's history. It's part of our history. It's interwoven into everything we've done as a nation. The transatlantic slave trade, slavery, the Nadir, the new Jim Crow era. So it's important to recognize that these things are real, not just obviously African Americans, but we talk about Native Americans and Trail of Tears. I mean, these are historical events that occurred. To recognize they occurred, be honest with ourselves, and then have a critical discussion about what we can do about addressing these issues. And also, Dr. Violet, let me tell you why that's important. We know that based on census data, I think around 2014, that the United States is 2042, excuse me, the United States is going to become a majority minority nation, if not sooner than that. So with that, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to continue to be competitive globally? Because the demographics in this country are shifting. The majority of students in the public school system are now students of color. and unfortunately, most of them come from underserved communities. So, with the demographic shift, the reality, we really need to make sure that our young people have the skill set, not only compete here, but globally, particularly when it comes to STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And we just haven't had an honest conversation. And a lot of it is fear, and I think embarrassment by some people to acknowledge, some of the atrocities that Black and, Native Americans have faced here in the United States, but it's part of who we are as a country. It's just as real as, his historical love of baseball. It's part of who we are as a country, and we have to embrace that.
So you've mentioned honest conversation, and that topic has come up in a lot of conversations I've had on my platform during many conversations I've had. What do you feel it's going to take to have that honest conversation? Because if it's not happening during an election year, what's it going to take to happen?
That's the question, Dr. Vibe. What is it going to take for us to have an honest conversation about race? It's a question that Americans have continued to ask, or Americans, marginalized groups, have asked for 400 years. And I don't know if we have enough time to kind of figure out. I don't even know if I can really, I could, I can answer the question, but I think we're not, the nation struggle to recognize its own history. Like, it's like we have selective memory. So we want to talk about, the fight for independence, from Britain, but we don't want to, and then later on the Civil War, but you don't want to talk about why the Civil War is fought. Or some school districts, I know even in Texas was criticized just a couple of months ago, that, the idea that slaves were immigrants, right? They try to keep that and put that in a textbook in Texas. Slaves weren't immigrants, right? Right. So, they were brought to the United States in bondage. That's part of who we are. The Civil War is fought over slavery between the North and the South, right? That's what it's about. It's a fact. It's a historical fact. So, but what you see is people try to cloud what happened between rhetoric and accusing you of reverse racism and a bunch of other ridiculous ideas. And then people want to jump forward to the civil rights era, the 1960s, like nothing happened in the early 1900s. There weren't lynchings. Or when you talk about the Niagara movement, which is a precursor to NAACP or the National Urban League, or all these other organizations were founded in response, the crisis, the newspaper for NAACP, all these things occurred in response to what the atrocities that Black people in this country were facing. So we have to acknowledge that these events occurred, and that Black people and other people of color are continue to face obstacles that some people seem oblivious to. Black Lives Matter is an example. Like, people, all lives matter. Well, if all lives matter, we wouldn't be talking about Black Lives Matter, or that Black males are, I think, 21 times more likely to be killed when they come in contact with law enforcement. Those are real statistics, and we have to figure out what we're going to do about addressing those issues.
I want to bring this up. You've mentioned Black Lives Matter a few times during this conversation. Something that people have approached me about and asked me to speak on is that Black Lives Matter is predominantly addressing the issues of Black men who have been killed in police encounters. This organization is led by Black women. Where are the Black men leading these organizations? Are to help, or and I don't want to leave Black women out here, but where are the Black men? Is this an issue of, again, the mentorship issue, again, lack of Black men leading?
I think what's important is that you're right. The Black Lives Matter concept idea, the hashtag was created by 3 Black women, who are, members, also member of the LGBT community, which I think is important. All right. So when we pull back a little bit, we talk about Black Lives Matter, which, like I said, I described as, for me, as represents, and everything that goes along with all the other organizations and entities fighting for equality, I could describe as the neo-civil rights movement. So I think what's important to remember that Black women have always been on the front lines for civil rights here in the United States. Ella Baker, it's consistent. It's always happened. They've always been there. So it's not really new per se. I mean, Rosa Parks here in the United States is considered the mother of the civil rights movement. But Black women, Black women like Audre Lorde, who, not only look at issues like the race, but sexual orientation here in the United States. So Black women have always been in the front lines for the fight for equality, because they're a double minority, right? So they have to deal with not only race, but gender, and in some instances, their sexual orientation, gender expression, identity. So it's not unusual, not for me, and like I said, for people who understand history, Black women have always been in the front line, in many respects, leading the way. And this is just another example. And I'm proud, is to know that 3 sisters came up with the concept of that Black Lives Matter with a hashtag. But there are a lot of Black men involved, organizations like the Dream Defenders, and I mean there are various other entities where Black men, and also be remiss not mentioning Black Greek level organizations here in the United States. My fraternity, in particular, Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, recently we're located, our national headquarters here in Baltimore City, and we had an event, and a number of Black men were invited to wear their T-shirts and take a photo in support of Black Lives Matter. And my organization is historically we're founded in 1906, and we do a lot of work in the community on the other Black fraternities who also, Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Iota Phi Theta, Phi Beta Sigma. We're all out as members out there trying to make a difference in our community.
And you're definitely right into my mind right now, because you mentioned a number of organizations: the 100 Black Men of America, Black Male Engagement, Campaign for Black Male Achievement, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Inc., Omega Phi Psi Phi Fraternity Inc., Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Inc., Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, and Lambda Phi Theta Fraternity. I didn't want to leave any of them out. What are organizations doing right?
They're leading. They're actively involved in the community, and I think what's important is that the problem is that so Black people are in control. We don't control the narrative in terms of media. Often with our organizations that we mention those fraternities and various other organizations I mentioned in the article. Those organizations on a daily basis are out not just mentoring Black men, but funding key initiatives. Many of those organizations we highlighted, many members of the Congressional Black Caucus here in the United States are members of those organizations, and also Black women members. Some of those we describe as the Divine Nine here in the United States. So those organizations on a daily basis are out there. And some of the members of our organization are out there, like Superman wears an S on his chest. Sometimes we're not always wearing paraphernalia in it. So you may never know. We're teachers, some of us in law enforcement and mentoring, nonprofits. So we're out there sometimes like Clark Kent. You don't even know we're members of organizations, but we're out there doing the work and working hard.
Just want to shout out, John Haynes says he's an A-Phi, hashtag 1906. And Tachi is saying, I see that there's an Alpha contingency in here. So you got a fellow brother in the room, John Haynes. Now, these organizations are doing a lot.
Brother John, okay, he's an alpha man, okay.
Good stuff.
He's an alpha man. He must be a good.
What do you feel? He's definitely an alpha man. What can the Black community do more of to advance this cause?
I think we need to invest in our communities, right? So, not everyone in our community is struggling financially, right? There's some, members of our community who come from, moderate or affluent, right? So they have, even if you come, have the resources, and not even if you don't have the money, if you have the time. If you don't have the money, you have the time. But we need to invest in our communities. So we need to invest in, I mentioned historical Black college universities. We need to invest in institutions with a history of serving Black students. We need to invest in our schools and our local community to make sure they have the necessary resources, that we provide mentorship, in these schools. And we need to find, like I said, investing. And it's also, when they're talking about investing, in terms of, we talk about mentorship, also, financially investing in the Black businesses, right? All of these. So we have the economic, health, education, political. We need to invest in candidates who represent our ideas with similar lived experiences. So those are all some things we need to do in terms of our advocacy as it relates to mentorship, right? Because all the things I mentioned are interconnected, right? So we can continue to mentor as many young people as possible, but we need to also be aware that we need to apply political pressure. We need to make sure, like I said, we invest in Black-owned businesses, et cetera. So mentorship is one piece of a much larger pie.
Okay, we've got some questions. I know time is running down, but I have some questions for you. Tachi is asking, what do HBCUs need to do more of to ensure healthy and fruitful communities?
I think they need to continue. A lot of historical Black college universities, some of them are located in urban, rural, and suburban communities. A lot of them have a tendency to be in close or with Black enclaves. I think those institutions, from the administrators down, students, faculty, auxiliary staff, need to be actively engaged in the Black community and provide support. And a lot of our HBCUs are doing that. But we need to do more, because if we don't take the time to invest in our communities, who will? So they need to continually actively be involved, and not members of the community shouldn't feel like these institutions are detached. We're not connected. We need to make sure you have a strong relationship with the community and communicate with members of the community, and working collectively to address issues within that community. Even if students live in another part of the country, during your 4 or 5 years, you live in that community and should invest.
What has the reaction to this article been? What's the reaction been to it?
The feedback, I had really good feedback on the article. I think, issues like this, mentorship, are really important to the Black community. And I think members of the Black community recognize this is something that we collectively have to do more of. You asked me, we talked about what, in terms of, Black mentorship in particular, what more you should be doing. This is, we are out there, they're boots on the ground, but we need to recruit more soldiers, and not just Black men. Black women have played a historical role. We just talked about the civil rights movement. We talked about Black Lives Matter, but I want to be remiss. Black women, are already out there mentoring. They're not just simply mentoring young women. They're out there mentoring young men, and I want to commend those sisters for doing that. And it's all hands on deck relating to mentorship.
Our HBCUs need to intentionally teach us about us, our history. And he's also saying, as we are learning more about our history, we need to teach about the global chessboard. Do you have any responses for any of those comments?
The global chessboard, I think that's really important, right? So I think it's important to understand that, like, for instance, when you talk about like 21st, you talk about the global economy. So it's important that we understand that not only in terms of addressing issues here in the United States or in North America, but that in terms of addressing issues throughout the African diaspora. So we have to help young people understand that the issues that impact you here impact part of that global community, people of African descent elsewhere. To give you an example, you see how the Black Lives Matter here in the United States has been replicated in other nations like Brazil, etc. So it's important to understand, and I think that's one of the really great things we saw about some of the civil rights leaders, is that people like King and even people like Malcolm X understood that, Kwame Ture understood in terms of you need to have a global perspective. You even look at Du Bois, and the end of his life, he moved to Ghana. Now he moved to Ghana because he was tired of the United States. But we really need to have a global perspective. You look at the United States, the political pressure that members of the Congressional Black Caucus, people like Randall Robinson, in terms of kind of pressure they applied to make sure the fight for Nelson Mandela's freedom years ago, right? So that was a diaspora issue, and we need to teach young people that there's a big world, that you can move to China, learn how to and learn how to speak Mandarin, right? That you can go to Senegal, that you can go work with people of African descent look just like you in Cuba. And then when countries like Haiti, like now, are dealing with issues after Hurricane Matthew, then we need to ask ourselves, what is our response to support our brothers and sisters in Haiti?
I think we'll leave it on this. Finish off on that. I know you've got on and you've given us so much quality content. Do you have? Hold on, another question. Touch is asking, do you think there is a conversation about also mentoring and cultivating young women? So do you feel that you hear a lot of desire, conversation about mentoring young Black women?
I do, and I want to say that there are a lot of phenomenal Black women out there who are forcing the nation, and even within the Black community, because I think the highest, in terms of the largest growing subgroup in terms of the prison industrial complex is Black women, right? That's really important. So we just can't. And I'm thank you for the question, because I don't want to be clear, because this article I wrote was specifically about Black males, but we need to make sure that we're providing Black women the support they need, because once again, they're double minorities. They deal with more issues than Black men do in many respects. And it's important. Mentoring young Black men and women is very important, particularly even students from the LGBT community. We need to make sure they have the necessary support systems in place to thrive. So it's vital that young Black women have the support that they need. So yes, I agree with the comment. We absolutely need to provide as much support to Black women as well as Black men. I don't want to in any way forget the sisters.
Excellent. Well, we're going to close off here, but first I'd like to thank Dr. Walker for taking time out of his positive, productive schedule. Also want to thank Tachi and John Haynes. Thank you so much for coming on the conversation. Great questions as always. Dr. Walker, do you have any parting comments? And then can you share any contact information if people want to follow up with you?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Larry, uppercase Larry, uppercase J, then uppercase Walker. So it's Larry J. Walker, the L, J, and W, uppercase number 2. So at Larry J. Walker number 2, uppercase L, J, and W, and the number 2 at the end, Larry J. Walker 2. Follow me on Twitter. I've written a number of articles for Ebony. I wrote one just last week on why Black men should try yoga. So I've written several articles for Ebony. Feel free to Google those articles and support. But like I said, follow me on Twitter. I hope to be back on your show sometime, Dr. Vibe, if you'll have me, and continue to, our dialogue on issues that impact people throughout the diaspora.
Well, first of all, if I have you, it's when I can get you. So don't say if I'll have you, it's when I can get you. That's first things first.
Okay.
Second
Fair
of all,
enough.
thank
Fair
you.
enough.
Yeah,
Fair
thank you
enough.
so. No problem. I've put Dr. Walker's contact information, the Twitter handle, in the chat on the side. I've also put a link to his conversation piece in Ebony. Do follow him. He writes fantastic stuff. Really, really good. And I will definitely have him back when he can spare some of his time. It's been a pleasure. Again, big shout out to Tachi and John, and especially John. It's been too long, but I hope that the family is doing fine. I know they are. Tachi, we will get you back real too, because we have to do our once a month media conversations. I am Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also a certified empowerment coach. I also am president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. If you want to touch base with me, I'll give you my email address right here, drvibeshow.com, website address, and Twitter handle. Okay, so there's my contact information. You've got, it should be Dr. Dr.VIB at the Dr. Vibe. Just go to the website and get me on contact information, and or on Twitter also. As always, I like to say, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles, and you're a solution for someone's problem. And tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m., I'm going to be doing my weekly men's show, and I have 2 special guests tomorrow night. Glenn Barker from the Mankind Project in Chicago and Dr. Marvin Thompson from the Lighthouse Education Foundation in New Orleans. We are going to be discussing men and loneliness, living with our choices. 8:30 Eastern time tomorrow night. I would highly encourage, if you have a few moments, to check out that conversation, whether you're a man or woman. It is going to be epic. And those 2 gentlemen know how to bring it when it comes to men. So I'd like to say, God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and also don't work on perfection. Just work on getting a little bit better each day. God bless and good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.